Capture the passion.
Welcome back to CPTP Season 4, Episode 4. Today's conversation is about immigrant business owners. Today we have a very special guest, Mr. Juan Ramirez. Juan, tell us about yourself.
Hello, my name is Juan Ramirez. I am currently employed, and I also have a business on the side. And sometimes you forget on how this came about, and when you stop and you think, and you give yourself a minute, and you go back to, well, how did this all begin? How did it start?
Yeah.
It's a dream come true, and it's a little bit of a wow.
Wow factor.
I can't believe it
Yeah.
how this came about.
So let's go as far back as you can remember. Immigrant from Mexico. Let's give a big shout out to La Piedad, Michoacan. All of our paisas out there.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that I've come across from La Piedad, Michoacan. As a matter of fact, so.
And we're gonna send this video to them and get it out there to them. But tell us, how far back do you remember? Do you remember when you were in Mexico?
I do, and it's more like a dream. Like little spots here and there. And the reason I say I do remember, and sometimes mom and my dad used to laugh like, no te acuerdas, you don't remember, because I would say, oh yeah, I remember chickens. I remember I remember hitting one of our cousins in the head, and I remember grandma getting mad at me. I remember that, but as much as I like to remember more, I think pretty much, those are the little things that I remember in Mexico.
In Mexico. So when we migrated over to the United States, how far back do you remember?
I remember, living in different apartments. I remember, waiting for dad because he would bring lunch or dinner, right? I remember that. I remember that vividly, and I remember not going to school because we were younger.
Yeah.
So I remember those days.
Is it what, South Central?
I remember downtown LA.
Yes.
Downtown LA. I remember specifically because there was a fire, and one of our uncles during that time lived with us, and we had to escape, through the emergency ladders.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and I remember we were on TV, right, or at least in the background. So I remember those days, and I remember because later going outside and playing, bikes and marbles and hide and seek, and I remember, wait, we didn't do that back then. Well, we were in apartments.
Yeah.
So we didn't have the platform to do those things.
Yeah, you didn't have a backyard, didn't have any of that stuff. Do you remember how you first started at school?
I remember crying going to school. I remember dad being upset, dragging me out from the house. I also remember pretending to be sick. I remember telling mom, Mom, I don't feel good today. My head hurts, my stomach hurts, and I remember those days. So I remember the beginning, going to kindergarten, walking to school, and I also remember once getting in school after 2 minutes, being comfortable, being okay, right? So I remember the beginning stages of going to school.
Going to school, yeah. So as an immigrant, knowing the language now that you have to be exposed to, right? At that time, we're talking about Spanish not being a predominant language at the school systems, not being a language that was easily acceptable by our peers. What were some challenges that you had to deal with, and how fast did the English language come to you?
That's an interesting question because now, from what I hear, from what I understand, at least my kids and friends, kids of friends, it's different.
Yeah.
Back then, I remember being in ESL. I think it's English second language.
Yes.
For the most part throughout high school. I remember there was always a few of us in class.
Mhm.
So, for example, in kindergarten, right? Just kind of going back to that time frame, there was a couple of us that were always separated.
Mhm.
We had to go to, kind of like to the side of the class, and
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
subjects that were taught um, were in Spanish to
Mm.
us. Um,
Sort of to help you catch up with.
yes, and I remember there was also other subjects that were for the whole class.
Mhm.
And for the most part, I remember that in kindergarten. I also remember going to one school in kindergarten, and it's kind of interesting because as you asked, going back and take us back on how this began. I count, and I always count, and I can name the schools attending 8 elementaries um, throughout my elementary period.
Wow.
Yeah,
Eight different schools.
8 different elementary schools, and for the most part, it was pretty much the same. I would cry, right?
In all 8
Before,
schools.
yeah, well, all the schools that wasn't different. It was just a different location.
Yeah.
But I remember crying, and I remember once getting in class or in the campus.
Like,
Yeah,
I'm
it
good.
was just okay, and seeing the friends and seeing the people,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you kind of get comfortable, and
Yeah.
you would play before the bell rang and before you go to class, and so that was the same crying. The other thing that was the same is the ESL. I remember some schools had a totally different class that from students from other classes would make up one class.
Also, you get pulled from your
Yes,
class during the day.
Yes, I remember that. Who's in ESL? Raise your hand, right? Okay, go with Mr. Weaver, and we would go with Mr. Weaver to another class, and there was other students from other classes.
That all spoke Spanish.
It was all
And we're trying to get caught up with
it
English
was all in
language.
Spanish,
Mhm.
and we would have a course to okay, this is how you say run.
Oh, so teaching
Right.
you the language as well, not just
Yes.
teaching you in Spanish, but
It was
also
also learning the English,
English
language. And honestly, I do remember it not being easy because obviously going home,
Mhm.
didn't have friends, didn't have backyard, didn't have
Right.
front yard. Going home and not practicing,
Mhm.
right? You always learn practice makes perfect,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
not practicing the language was a big challenge.
yeah.
It was a big challenge, and um, I I remember learning math, right, in Spanish.
Mhm.
I remember learning.
Well, math is universal, right? I mean, four
Right,
is
right,
four.
exactly.
The value doesn't change; just the name of it based on the language, but the value stays the same.
And I think that's why even now I always say math is probably my uh, best subject
Mhm.
because maybe I was good at it because
Right.
I was able to practice it because that didn't require writing a sentence
Right.
or that didn't require
Practicing with someone else, you could do it independently.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Got it, got it.
And so yeah, I remember that being a struggle. I remember that being a challenge and overcoming it. I'm gonna go ahead and fast forward a little bit. Even after graduating high school,
Mhm.
um, after graduating high school and going through the process of okay, what's after high school, realizing that wow, my English is not there
Mhm.
as much as it is, with my friends
Right.
or with others. And I remember that was a little bit of okay, what am I gonna do here? I gotta learn English.
Right.
And the English that I learned when later again, we're fast forward, um, in high school playing football and playing baseball and playing different activities with the friends. That's the English that I knew.
Yeah, but it's not the academic language that required.
Exactly my point.
Right.
Exactly my point. So it was a little bit of a fear to
Mhm.
me that okay, I'm done with high school. I'm going to the military. I'm going to college. What am I doing?
Right.
And so it was a little bit of a challenge. And so we can kind of go back to the timeline here. And um, in elementary, sure, you had recess. Sure, you had lunch where you practice or you try to practice
Right. As much
the
as you can.
the language. And I remember, I don't remember the word bullying back then, but I remember being afraid
Yeah.
that he's talking to me in English. I would respond in Spanish because I kind of knew what he was
You were able to make it
referring
out,
to,
yeah.
right? But I remember being embarrassed, maybe shy, maybe afraid to attempt to speak English because the reaction. What's going to be the reaction of my
Your
friends?
articulation is not there. Your friend's articulation is at a whole different level because they probably have been here long. Probably were born here. They probably have people they can talk to at home and practice.
Exactly, and being the oldest of eight,
Yeah.
I think I was at a disadvantage. Didn't know that then.
Right.
I just knew then that I don't know English. I cannot communicate.
Yeah.
Cannot have a conversation. So yes, I was afraid.
Yeah. Because then at home, Spanish was spoken.
Yes.
Right. It wasn't even among siblings. The conversations weren't in English, and if it was, it wasn't really again that academic English to help you or prep you into that.
Yeah, and mind you, you would watch TVs, we would watch cartoons, going back to, the early '80s, the Smurfs, the Thundercats, the
Voltron,
Transformers, Voltron, Incredible Hulk, and Knight Rider, you endless, right?
Right.
I didn't understand what was said,
but you had visuals.
You had visuals, right? You have visuals. You have things that you can correlate, that you can then put together and say, that is funny.
Yeah.
And then you will laugh, or you would say, whoa, that's cool.
Right.
And so those visuals, those things that we saw on TV were not enough. I remember that now.
Yeah.
That was not enough.
Yeah.
And again, just having that fear, when you go to school, when the teacher would ask a question and you had the answer because it was math, you were just afraid of saying the answer in English. Yeah. You were, I was afraid of saying, I know the answer is 8. I don't want to raise my hand. And nobody else hands was up. I wanted to raise it, but I can't. Yeah. No way. What if when I say 8, it doesn't come out right? Yeah. It was that. It
sounds funny.
Yeah, it's gonna sound funny. So it was a challenge. It was a challenge, and it was a struggle. And again, it's I'm sure there's others out there that have gone through that or are going through that, and I'm hoping that that they can relate to what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, and I think it's important to note and understand that a lot of the students, a lot of our demographic, our first generation students, immigrant DACA recipients, they can relate a lot of what you're talking about. And I'm sure it resonates a lot because they understand that, damn, even back then, there was a struggle. It's at a different level, but the struggle was still there. So you pretty much went through K through 12th grade as ESL. Did you find a way to exit out of that program, or did you graduate with ESL?
I don't remember. I'll be honest. I don't remember if there was a timeline, if there was a period where there was an evaluation of some sort, where a teacher says, "You're ready."
You're ready.
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
But I can probably assume that I wasn't ready, and that's probably why again, even 12th grade graduating, I was in ESL. So maybe I wasn't ready.
So here's a question for Juan, and curious to know, did you ever talk to mom and dad about it, or talk to a counselor or to someone into saying, you know what, how do I mainstream into English only?
The answer is no, and I think it's easier for me to answer now versus then. Yeah, if you asked me then, hey, can you ask? I would have said no. I don't want to ask.
Yeah,
I'm okay, right?
Yes.
I think no, I did not do that. To me, it was normal. To me, I remember sharing this story, going home, whether it was, I remember first through at least 6th grade, which was elementary, going home and either with a folder or a workbook, and I need to do my homework, and I need to do page 11 questions 1 through 10, getting home, opening the workbook, and if I ran into an obstacle or a question I didn't understand, I didn't have a resource.
Right.
I couldn't ask mom
Mm-hmm.
because I just knew she didn't know.
She didn't know. Right.
Dad was the figure, at least for me, that worked.
Yeah.
Dad would get home and he was tired,
Mm-hmm.
and he would have dinner, and he would get ready to go to bed because he had to get up early and go to work.
Yeah.
And really, my resource was my mom.
Yeah.
Um, Again, I'm the oldest, so
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
And did we have cousins? Yeah, we did have cousins, and they were younger than me.
Yeah.
Right. And so I remember that it was normal for me that, okay, I gotta go through this. So my only option was I gotta either guess an answer or leave it blank.
Mm-hmm.
And many instances I would guess, and I would try to put letters and numbers together and comprehend. Okay, it must mean this.
This is
Therefore, this is the answer.
Mm-hmm.
So I would do that, and when I would turn in my work, when it was a quiz time or test time, that would reflect.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do so good.
Yeah.
That would reflect, and then I remember being offered, tutoring, ESL, which for the most part it helped.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna say it didn't help. It did help. Looking back, to me it felt like a slow process.
Yeah.
And
so now let's fast forward into you graduated high school, you survived K through 12, just figuring it out on your own. You're out of high school. What was it that made you say, you know what, I got to do something? It's time for me to find a path, to take a route. What was it? What were you thinking at that time?
I'm going to tell you exactly what I was thinking, because just as you asked the question, everything came. Yeah. After high school, I remember thinking, I have to do something.
Yeah.
Right? And because throughout, K through 12, Dad would push us on that. Yeah. Dad would say, you have to do something. Mm-hmm. You guys got to do something. You guys can't. And you guys got to go to school.
Estudien.
Estudien. Yeah. Go to school, do your homework, listen. You're not going to do what I'm doing. That was his thing. Yeah. And for me, there was no other option. I got to do something. Yeah. Because that's it. I cannot do anything else. Mm-hmm. And that was, and to me, that was a motivation, I remember, because whatever it was that I was going to do, like you said, I had survived. I did it. Yeah. And I remember feeling that grad night. I remember feeling that, wow, this is over. It's done. Yeah. Now I can take the next step, mm-hmm. not knowing what the next step was. Yeah. So to answer your question, I remember feeling that. I remember feeling, I got to do something. Yeah. And I was determined to do something. Mm-hmm. It wasn't clear what I was going to do, but I had to do something.
You had to do something.
Yes.
And were there any people, any family members, or anyone that influenced you into a certain way or a certain path that you wanted to take because you needed to do what it was? Here, part of our program, CPTP, is we mentor students into not telling them what to do, but sort of giving them a pathway that they can possibly take. Did you have that during high school, maybe even after high school, where you're like, okay, this is something option? Is there anyone that you could have talked to figuring out what that next step could have been?
It was funny because to answer this question, I'm gonna kind of rewind.
Yeah.
This thing. I remember clearly. It was first grade. There was groups, right? They kind of separate us in groups, and there was it was an art subject mm-hmm. session, right? And for some reason, I don't remember how, I was the one that was going to sketch out. It was I remember it was a bear, and there was a tree, and there was there was like a forest, right? It was
the logo of the school?
It kind of sounds like it, right?
Thinking of the bear.
It kind of sounds like it, but and it could have been, and I don't remember the exacts, but I remember I was assigned to because somebody had to sketch it,
Yeah.
and then somebody else had to put in, I think it was like construction paper and make it all colorful and you know
Yeah.
kind of stand out, and it was at that point that I got a lot of wows. Like, whoa, how did you sketch that?
Yeah.
I don't know. I just got the pencil and and then there was other art courses that you know in class that before you knew it, like, hey, you know, can we have him? He can sketch.
Yeah.
So I remember having that passion for drawing because I felt like it came natural because everybody was, how did you do that? Did you trace it? Did you? I don't know, I just did it.
And there wasn't any language that you needed to master
And I'm glad you pointed it out because I was going to point that out. You know, talking about math, universal, to me, art was universal.
Yeah.
I didn't need to speak English. I didn't need to write a sentence.
Right.
I didn't need to read anything for the most part. You can tell me what you want, or you can describe what you want, and I can sketch it out. So or should I say during the elementary days, I remember, you know, we talked about Transformers, Voltron, you know, cartoons, right? I remember learning that that's how cartoons were generated.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I want to do cartoons. I want to do something with art. And I had that in mind. I always had that in mind. And, you know, middle school, high school, I would airbrush shirts. So back then, it was fairly popular. You
That's
would airbrush.
coming back though. Airbrush is coming back big time. Yeah.
Yes, it is coming back. Actually, my son David, he's watching right now. He's starting to airbrush.
Yeah.
But airbrush was a big thing, and one of the struggles in for me to airbrush because I want to try that.
Yeah.
What's airbrush? Is it a brush with air? I couldn't. I wanted to put that together, and you know, the airbrushes back then, I remember they were $50, and I remember mom and dad saying, "Nope, we don't have $50."
Get $50, yeah.
Somehow, some way, one of my friends, his name's Alex, in high school. He was in the basketball team. He heard, right, that I wanted to get an airbrush. I want to get an airbrush. He said, "Hey, I have an airbrush. My uncle works at a warehouse where they sell airbrushes for cakes." And I remember that. And I remember you and I went to his house.
Remember the dogs?
Yes, the dogs.
Yeah, I remember that.
It was Doberman dogs that you and I, when he opened the door, he let the dogs loose, and it was kind of
get the water hose.
So if you remember, he says, "Okay, here's the airbrush. Do something."
Yeah.
And I remember airbrushing a hoodie, a white hoodie of Virgen de Guadalupe, and different colors and whatnot. And I remember taking it home, and I remember showing my friends, and everybody was like, "How did you do that? How did you do that?" So I knew that I have to do something with art. I want to do something with art. So that was my thing. That's what
you envisioned yourself doing something.
I wanted to do something with it because I can do it. It was easy for me.
Yeah.
And I realized that it wasn't easy for everybody else. And so I had to do something with it. And so fast forward, you know, right now, I'm involved with a lot of it, which is kind of funny in a way. And don't do cartoons, right? but I'm involved with it. It makes my job easier. Yeah. I'm able to communicate with employees, with customers, with suppliers, and putting stuff together, right? More so in graphics versus sketching, but it's just easy for me to put together, especially when we talk to people in or customers, I should say, in Asia, China, Japan. They're very visual, and so I'm always looked upon. Hey, can you put this together?
Provide a visual for it?
Even some of our salesmen, hey, can you put this together? You know, because again, it's easy for me. You know, so I'm happy that I can use that talent at work and make money off of it.
And you know what? As I'm hearing you speak, in my mind, I see the challenge of language and that struggle for 13 years, 13 of your earliest years in life, but yet you still found the way to find a passion that now is paying off. You know, to have these visuals, to have these drawings that connect with other people. You might not speak their language, which was your challenge, but yet you use your talent as a medium to communicate with other people. And like you said, it's still bringing you some financial contribution to your income, and that's fascinating. This, despite the challenge, you turned it around and made it to be one of your skills now, as a business owner. As you're going through your journey after high school, before starting your business, tell me what was it? What was that like? Was it already a clear path for you? Okay, it has to be with art, and that's what I'm gonna do. Or were there any deviations from that?
You know, as I go back and I try to connect the dots, um, it's you know, it's interesting, and the way I connect the dots is, you know, and I kind of put it together with how I would, for example, we're here. If I'm gonna draw you right now, I'm gonna sketch you out. Um, One technique that I use, and I share it with one good friend of mine, tattoo artist Danny Rodriguez. Um, I remember sharing this with him. So I would, from here to there, I would visualize the distance between your eyes and then your nose and then your lips and then your hairline. And then I kind of put that together on a piece of paper. I'm able to do that, right? And maybe because I enjoy math, I'm able to say half of this, half of that.
I didn't make that connection, but yeah, okay, I can see that.
If I divide this by 3 times, I can see that, you know, and I put that together.
Yeah.
And I remember right after high school, one of my first options, because I had different options, was, you know, I'm going to join the military. And the reason for that is because my friends were.
Okay.
My friends were going to join the military. My friend Manuel Rodriguez, Jerry Salazar, and I remember having that conversation with them.
Yeah.
And I remember the recruiter visiting home, mom and dad, and just kind of going over it, and everything sounded, you know, good, and okay, all right. And it was interesting because so when I did my physical, I had a broken leg that I was still recovering from playing football, and I failed the physical exam, and the recruiter basically said, "Yeah, you got to wait a year." So I had to find plan B. Yeah. Which I kind of had, and it was doing something with art. And I remember seeing this commercial, the Art Center in Pasadena, and what I remember they displayed is, I want to do that.
Yeah.
I definitely want to do that. I remember calling and finding out that the cost was just something that no way. And I remember mentioning to mom and dad, and they said, yeah, it's not gonna work.
Yeah.
You gotta do something else. I specifically remember that I was always the one that would, you know, put things together. The antenna, connect the antenna. And I also remember trying to understand, how does the antenna work? Yeah. What does the antenna do so that you get a clear picture or image in television? Or connecting the VCR. We had an uncle that he was the only uncle that I remember that had a camcorder. Yeah. And he would visit us from up north, here and there. And I remember him teaching me, you talk about who were the ones who motivate you, who, you know, influence you. Right. He was one influence because he knew how the camcorder worked, and he would connect the RCA cables to the back of the television, and he would play back what he recorded, and I was intrigued by that. Like, how does that work? Yeah. Right, output, input, right? Yellow is video, white and red is audio, left and right speaker. Yeah. And that kind of, you know, interests me.
Yeah. And that's also math. One and one equals something else.
And you know what? And you know, I kind of describe how I would draw you, and maybe that's what I had in me, that I wanted to put things together, and I'm sure a lot of people out there don't realize what they have and what they can do in life with it, right? So outside of watching the art center commercials, I remember seeing commercials of ITT.
Mm-hmm.
ITT Tech.
Yeah.
And I remember having a conversation with my friends because my friend said, "Wait, you're not going to the Marines?
Yeah.
Then I'm not going to go either."
So you were going because of them.
It was kind of a
full circle there.
An agreement that we had, which is funny now. And like, yeah, you know what? If you don't go, then I'm not going to go. And I remember this ITT thing.
The Marines are going to come after you.
Well, I failed the physical, so I couldn't attend. And I had to do something. Yeah, I had to do something with it. So I remember calling ITT. And I remember talking to my friends. You know what? I'm gonna go to ITT. Well, ITT? Why? I don't know.
The same Marine friends?
It was the same Marine friends. It was Manuel, Jerry. It's funny. It's funny how it came about, and you know, they agreed. Or Jerry's mom talked to my mom, and okay. And next thing you knew, we had a recruiter in the house, and then fill out all the paperwork, and we took a test, and then before you know it, you know, I started ITT, and because I was intrigued, I want to know how electronics work.
Yeah.
And I feel lucky, and again, going back to your question, influence, you know, I feel lucky because during that time period, if you remember, Jorge, the mid 90s, right? 94, 95, 96, technology was launching, right? More and more people talked about computers. More and more people were talking about phones.
The internet.
So I was fortunate to attend ITT and learned the electronic side of what was becoming. I remember learning fiber optics back then. I remember learning LEDs. I remember learning, you know, voltage, DC, AC, the difference.
Yeah.
I remember even programming a computer, DOS base. So
is that the one where you would punch in the commands?
Yeah, punch in the commands, right? The big floppy disk, right? I don't know if
you guys don't know what a floppy disk is, that was the thumb drive before the thumb drive.
Yeah, and you were, if you wanted to put a picture in a floppy disk, it was too big.
Yeah.
The picture's too big for the floppy, but it was a time that when I look back now, I couldn't pick the better time to learn some of this stuff, because even with technology now, I'm able to utilize some of that stuff now. I'm able to troubleshoot if a computer is not working, if we need a cable, USB 3. What is a USB 3? What does it look like? Oh, I comprehend, and I kept up, and so it made it easy for me. You know, when we were connecting computers, we're connecting you know, vinyl cutters, we're connecting laser machines, we're installing drivers. I'm able to do that, you know, and so that's more or less, you know, after high school and what comes next. So that's what some of the struggles there. I remember some of the struggles, you know, the English language.
Still a barrier.
Yes. Now it's after high school. Now I have to speak English. There's no ESL here.
Around it,
And that was the biggest challenge starting, you know, ITT. That was huge. That was big, because I got books this thick. You know, there was no links to any programs or websites. It was books. And I just felt overwhelmed. During this time, you know, obviously you had your friends. I had my friends that I attended ITT with, and that was a big help for me. Without them, I'm not sure I would have, I'm going to use your word, survived, because having them and sharing questions, sharing, not understanding an assignment with them made it easier.
So these were like your mentors, not even labeling it at that time, but now in
Now
retrospect,
you look back at it, yeah,
you're like,
they
wow,
were,
they
they were my
really
mentors.
they mentored you so much to be that resource to help you get to that path that you were going in.
They absolutely were, and you know, speaking of resource, not having the transportation,
Yeah.
not having the transportation. Now, let me kind of put in perspective here. We I was living in Boyle Heights,
Boyle Heights.
and ITT was in Van Nuys.
Very nice.
Without looking at Google or anything, it's about 30 plus miles, right? One way. Um, because my friends were attending, um, you know, I was able to carpool with them,
Carpool with
or,
them, yeah.
you know, and I was able to utilize them as a resource. Obviously, we had that friendship relationship,
Yeah.
and we would help each other in homework and assignments and what have you. So it was, you know, they were not only mentors, but they were also a resource.
Yeah, definitely. I remember you talked about transportation, the little red truck, as being that that resource to get you from point A to point B that eventually paved the way to where you're at now as a business owner, where you're at now mentoring others and pretty much without you even knowing, paying it back, paying it forward to others to help them along their journey to find their success, whatever their success was. I'm intrigued. Any more mentors that have helped you one way or another that has led you into who you are today, again, as an immigrant business owner, that you want to acknowledge?
There's a lot of them, Jorge. There's a lot of them as I go through the timeline here. You know, I mentioned my friends. You're mentioning the first red truck. It was a Datsun truck, 1977,
Yeah.
and this is year 1995.
1995, yeah.
That truck, my parents, mom and dad, had to borrow $700 from different people.
Different people to just get that 700 to pay for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was aware that the truck needed work. The brakes, right? Mom remembers this. Little sister Vivi remembers this probably. I had to pump the brakes a few times before the truck
Were actually
stopped.
grabbed.
Yeah. So obviously, mom and dad, number one, mentors. You know, they pushed us, and we just had to respond. There was no option. We had to respond somehow. During this time, obviously, I had friends, other friends that I met throughout, teachers, right? I actually had a communication with one of my art teachers, Miss Vinny, if she's still out there, from Roosevelt High School. I realized that I took, during my high school era, I took 7 elective art classes.
Wow.
And they were all with her.
Oh, with her.
With Vinny. You know, different classes, sketching, painting.
Different levels, yeah.
She was a big influence on that. Miss Couragean, which I met during that time, big, huge influence.
Right.
Motivate me in different ways.
Yeah.
One of probably the biggest help me learning the language, just communicating, just having conversations, just sharing information.
Right.
I you know, I had to learn it. I had to learn it, the language, and one of the biggest influence on me learning and not only learning how to speak, but you know, there's a way of communicating.
Proper way, especially being as a business owner, there's a proper way to communicate.
Exactly, and presenting the right stuff.
Right.
Right when I started, right after ITT, Miss Grajan, obviously, big influence on. Okay, this is how you're gonna interview. This is what you need to say. You know, you how many times you guys practice your interview? I got to interview. I got to meet with the boss. I got to meet with the president. I got to.
Yeah.
It was nerve-wracking. You know, what are they going to ask?
Yeah.
You know, the question that they asked that now I'm asking those questions when I hire
now
people.
you're in that position. Yeah, definitely.
yeah, she helped me along the way, and not that it made it easier, but just basically narrowing down the understanding
Yeah.
on what questions are going to be asked. It was a big help.
Yeah, and you had someone. I think it sounds like aside from the friends that you had someone that was in that at that level to give you some guidance, some perspective into what to possibly expect, to pretty much train you into that to say, okay, you know what, I get it. Now that you're in that position interviewing people, you reflect on it and be like, man, I that's where I learned all this from. So huge props to her.
Yeah.
So now as a business owner, do you ever just sit and think, dang, I made it? So here's something that one of my mentors tells me, Victor Soto. He tells me, I'm not going to use his exact words, but he says, hey, dude, do you ever just like think about the positions that you hold and say to yourself, man, I made it? I never thought about it. As an immigrant myself, it just, we were having this conversation before we started. We weren't exposed to brag about our accomplishments. We weren't exposed to patting ourselves on the back, giving ourselves credit. We were more like, okay, this is what we have to do. We were a lot in survival mode, growing up in poverty, growing up around gangs, drugs, prostitution, killing, shootings, what have you. We were in the midst of all that. Our childhood was that. But now as a business owner, do you ever get that? Like, man, I made it.
You know what? You know what I get a lot is how did it happen? I get a lot of that. I still think
It's a real feeling?
it is. It really is. And we were having this conversation earlier. It really is. And yeah, I kind of mentioned to you, I kind of felt kind of nervous.
Yeah.
This is the first time I'm actually talking about
journey.
yes, about the journey, the story, and you mentioned how did I get here? I think there's still more to come.
Yeah.
I want more, and so everybody out there that's watching, it's the story doesn't end. It's great to think about how the journey, how it got you where you're at today.
Yeah.
There's still more to come.
There's some more to come.
Now having the opportunity, as you says, as a business owner, talking to customers, talking to suppliers, and obviously David, Eileen, Samantha, that they're exposed to this. You mentioned we were exposed to other things. My kids are exposed to this. I'm hoping that they take over the story.
Yeah.
They continue the journey because it's to be continued.
Yeah.
It doesn't end here.
It doesn't end there, and it's. I think it's important to acknowledge the struggle that mom and dad have done. Living their legacy is, I think, it's our obligation, not just as immigrants, not just first generation DACA recipients, what have you, but more of the legacy of where we came and what we want to do. Sounds like you had a lot of struggle, but you found a way to continue to push forward with the support system, the mentors that you had in your life. And that's really important for our audience to understand that I'll have this argument with anybody. You'll never make it alone. You need people. You need people to help you. And sometimes at that point, you don't realize it. But when you reflect, 30, 40 years later, you're like, I could not have done it without them. And this is where we give credit to our mentors. This is where we give credit to anyone that's a mentor out there in the field. But for our audience, as an immigrant business owner, what would be that one advice that you would give them?
I'm gonna start by giving thanks to people I have mentioned already, and one person specifically, Ramon Cardenas, who I've worked with over 20 years, and the Welters family, Gene Welter, Darren, the platform that they've given me, the platform where Ramon and I met, we worked.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's I cannot do it by myself. There's people that, and there's a lot of people. Bill Galarza, before I got to the employer where I'm at.
Yeah.
So a little bit of what you said, people that are watching this, yes, you do have struggles. You're gonna go through obstacles. That's part of it. It's part of the journey. It's not the end. You have to get up and continue. You have to, as you said, you may not know who your mentors are today. You will later. Listen to advice.
Yeah.
Listen to criticism. Don't take it negative. Do something with it. Make it positive.
Yeah.
It's gonna help. If I was able to do this, everybody out there can do that and more. And so I just want to thank you for having me here, Jorge, and allow me to share this journey, allow me to share this story. And I want to thank the rest of my family, my other brother, my sisters, mom and dad. That's where it started.
Yeah.
And they are and have been the number one supporters.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing your journey with us. Very powerful, very inspirational. I hope we can find that identification with you to say, hey, you know what, he did it. There's a possibility that I can do it too.
Yeah.
Thank you for everything. Thank you, everyone. Until the next episode, stay safe, stay healthy.
Thank you, guys.
Capture the passion.